Story 1. The quality of everything has declined. As an electrician, I've noticed that the quality of items like hole saws, drill bits, and screws is not what it used to be before the COVID pandemic. I have hole saws in my toolbox that are over 5 years old, and they are still in excellent condition. Recently, however, I've encountered hole saws that lose teeth when cutting through plastic. Story 2. A lot of services and experiences have cut back on offerings and will likely never bring them back. It's late, and I can only think of one example right now. The last few hotels I visited only cleaned rooms between guests or on the third day of my stay, unless I specifically requested a visit from housekeeping. However, every so often I go somewhere and notice an empty spot or old signage and think, oh yeah, they used to have that. Story 3. People experience strain in their family and community friendships. A significant divide emerged during COVID-19, and it still exists. Story 4. Latent addictions have the potential to flourish, and many individuals are now finding themselves in a difficult situation with their substance of choice. Story 5. I am a veterinary assistant. Everyone decided to adopt puppies during the lockdown, and now those puppies have grown into neurotic, anxious dogs. We are frequently sending home medications for 3- and 4-year-old dogs that are so overwhelmed with anxiety that they are destroying everything and becoming aggressive. Story 6. Why can't I find an all-night diner anymore or go to Walmart at 2 a.m.? I understand that not every Walmart needs to be open 24/7, but of the 29 Walmarts in my city, couldn't a couple of them offer overnight service? Story 7. Companies are now more amenable to offshoring, since they have realized that for many jobs, working from home means that physical presence is not necessary. Story 8. I think the fact that we barely talk about the pandemic indicates how little we have collectively assimilated it, let alone learned from it. A significant increase in isolation comes to mind, though. Story 9. Mental fatigue. We are in survival mode, first because of the pandemic itself and then because of its ramifications such as inflation, distrust in government, and psychological distress. I attribute this mental fatigue to the collective brain fog that people have mentioned. There is also a sense of collective exhaustion, apathy, and even a shared experience of depression and anxiety. We have been through a lot, and we do not see things improving significantly. I dislike feeling this way, and I know others do too. Story 10. There will be a noticeable wave of students facing challenges. Online learning was not an effective approach for the majority of students, and it was often implemented poorly. Additionally, the implications on social behavior are complex and difficult to address. Students from various grade levels and higher education were affected, leading to a range of independent issues. As someone entering my sophomore year of mechanical engineering, I can say that the COVID-19 pandemic, combined with severe depression triggered in part by it, has caused significant damage to my education. It took 2.5 years for me to feel as though I had finally entered a positive phase. Story 11. Small businesses are collapsing due to rising rental and lease costs. Many small business owners, myself included, were forced to close our physical stores because of the pandemic. We operated in a mall and faced lockdowns and curbside pickup for 9 months. We lost over $10,000 a month and ultimately had to shut our doors. On top of that, we were hit with a massive fine for breaking our lease, despite the government mandating that landlords work with businesses to help them survive. My landlord did not cooperate and imposed a $90,000 fine. I lost all my savings, my car, and was only 30 minutes away from losing my house. It was quite overwhelming. Now that things are more balanced and I know what to expect in retail post-pandemic, I have been searching for a place to rent so I can start my business again. However, at this rate, that is unlikely to happen. Rental costs are astronomical compared to pre-pandemic prices. Units that were empty in 2019 for $5,000 a month are still vacant, now priced at $8,000. My previous unit, which was $6,500 a month, is also now $8,000 and remains empty. Everyone is financially strained, so there is no extra money to spend. Additionally, retail theft has sharply increased, further reducing the average revenue for businesses compared to pre-pandemic levels. Based on my research, I estimate that in a good year, I would only make 50 to 65% of what I earned in a typical year from 2015 to 2019. If landlords continue to demand significantly higher rents for the same retail spaces, many businesses will not survive. As an example, there is a small strip mall near me with only 5 units. 2 units are owned by the building owner and have been there since 1985, so they are not going anywhere. Since 2020, the other 3 units have seen a variety of businesses, including a barber shop, a salon, a hydroponics shop, an Indian restaurant, a cannabis store, a hip-hop culture clothing and jewelry shop, an international grocer, a pizza shop, a bar and grill, another pizza shop. That totals 10 different businesses in 3 units. I know at least 2 of these businesses have had multiple owners, as they changed hands within their short-lived existence. This phenomenon is not limited to my local strip mall. It is happening everywhere. Businesses open, last 2 to 6 months, close down, and then the cycle repeats. Every small business owner I know is suffering. Many are operating with one person managing the business while the other holds a full-time job to help cover expenses. Savings are dwindling, and debt is skyrocketing. People are losing everything. Moreover, it's not just small businesses that are struggling. Large corporations are facing similar challenges. Major retailers are shutting down hundreds of stores and restaurants due to insufficient revenue to stay afloat. We are headed for a significant collapse as the overwhelming debt burden affects everyone, not just business owners. I don't know anyone who isn't in debt, and many people I know are carrying debt equivalent to over a year's salary. With the cost of products, utilities, taxes, goods, services, transportation, fuel, food, and rent all increasing, businesses will continue to decline, and the situation is expected to worsen before it improves. Story 12. Not too sure if it's less obvious, but the practice of working from home while sick has become a concern. Working remotely is a great option for those who need it. However, if you are sick, there are some who will either continue to work from home when they should be resting, or have managers who expect them to work even when unwell. In my younger days, I was made to feel guilty for being sick. As I got older, I encountered workplaces that encouraged and supported taking the necessary rest and staying home. Now, with the ability to work from home, the boundaries have blurred once again. Story 13. Kids who graduated during COVID lost a significant amount of learning, creating a large divide between young university students and graduates. Story 14. My wife is a teacher, and both her children and parents are off. I believe the parents never fully recovered, so the children are not as well trained. Along those lines, all her teacher friends are stretched to their limits. They all experienced something traumatic and never received a break from it. I suspect several professions are dealing with post-COVID burnout. I think this will catch up to us in a few years. Story 15. A severe and damaging distrust in actual science primarily stems from blatant misinformation, poor science communication, extreme politicization, and a loss of nuance. This is the saddest part to me. Story 16. Children are not developing the same social skills as before. Removing young children from regular social interactions affects their development. Story 17. Rise in cell phone addiction. We were all home alone and didn't have much to do besides scroll on our phones. Now, even in group settings, half of the people are on their phones. This was not solely a problem before, but it has become a bigger issue now. Story 18. It made me realize that when a catastrophic pandemic occurs, we are completely unprepared. COVID-19 is terrible, but I feel like it was a practice test that we failed miserably. Instead of making us more prepared for the next pandemic, I would argue that COVID-19 actually made us less prepared. Can you imagine if another pandemic happened in the next decade or two? God forbid it is more dangerous than COVID-19. Story 19. Nightlife isn't what it used to be. Pubs, clubs, and bars are still notably less busy or have disappeared in some areas. Story 20. In Australia, everything seems to be challenging since the pandemic, whether it is directly related or not. Everything, including housing and groceries, is extremely expensive. It is quite unreasonable. My fiancé and I both have permanent full-time salary jobs, but if I don't take on extra work during the weekend, we often come up short. In my opinion, this is unacceptable and not how things should be. Healthcare is chaotic. The last time I tried to visit urgent care, I was turned away because they were understaffed and had too many patients waiting. I didn't even attempt to go to the hospital. On top of that, it is nearly impossible to get an appointment with a general practitioner, and we often have to pay out of pocket for that now. It used to be free through the national healthcare system, and while you can receive some reimbursement, the upfront cost is the main issue. The hospitality and service sectors are struggling, which is not the fault of the workers. Many places feel run down, and the quality of service is often poor, again, typically due to circumstances beyond the workers' control. Throughout all of this, wages have virtually remained stagnant compared to inflation for years, and that is starting to significantly impact our lives. Story 21. Case numbers for infections like Streptococcus A, influenza, and respiratory syncytial virus have risen since the pandemic. It is almost as if hand washing and sanitizing were beneficial. Who could have known? Story 22. The unprecedented transfer of wealth to the wealthiest in society has further driven and embedded inequality. The money being used to buy assets has increased property prices and will continue to drive them upward as demand increasingly outstrips supply. Collectively, our health has suffered. There seems to be a denial about the fact that we are all repeatedly contracting COVID-19. I hear people talking about unusual strains of flu and summer colds that are almost certainly COVID-19 going undetected, either because most people aren't testing or the lateral flow tests are no longer picking up whatever mutated variants are in circulation. The long-term effects of this are almost certainly a ticking time bomb in terms of life expectancy and quality of life in later years. Story 23. I received an email today attributing poor customer service to COVID-19. I believe companies realized they could use this as an excuse and have not made an effort to return to normal. Story 24. The vaccine controversy continues. I am currently undergoing a 5-year allergy treatment with monthly injections, and you wouldn't believe the number of people who have advised me to be cautious about what is being put into my body. These are individuals who would never have voiced such concerns 5 years ago. Story 25. More people are staying home and working when they have a cold or similar illness, instead of coming into the office and infecting everyone else. Story 26. A decline in customer service is evident. While it's common for retail workers to feel undervalued while earning minimum wage, it seems that being yelled at over the intercom to leave 30 minutes before closing was not a common occurrence before the pandemic. Additionally, asking for assistance in locating an aisle often results in people shrugging and walking away. Story 27. The number of people who suffer from myalgic encephalomyelitis/chronic fatigue syndrome has increased significantly. Some individuals have been suffering for more than a decade, but it seemed to be a small enough issue to be overlooked. However, with the rise of COVID-19, many new cases of myalgic encephalomyelitis/chronic fatigue syndrome have emerged, yet it continues to be ignored. People are losing everything while confined to their homes. It is a serious situation that remains unaddressed. Story 28. Brain damage, as COVID-19 can cause neurological damage. This could explain the sudden rise of rage and aggression in people. If we look at the Spanish flu, about 2 years after that pandemic, a sudden outbreak of sleeping sickness affected many individuals. I believe we are witnessing something similar now. Story 29. Children and adults between the ages of 12 and 20 are significantly affected socially. They were essentially isolated for 1.5 to 2 years during critical periods of socialization and are now at a disadvantage socially. Story 30. I have a high school student and a middle school student. Middle school students can be quite unruly, with a lot of fighting and chaos. The students who would have been in kindergarten to 4th grade in 2020 missed important lessons in elementary school, such as how to sit at a desk, take turns, and socialize with classmates. The impact of that missed year is very apparent. Story 31. Companies seem to have figured out they can increase prices to exorbitant amounts and get away with it. Story 32. My special needs son lost all of his social activities for 2 years. When COVID-19 vaccines became available, he received his shot, but he has no interest in reconnecting with his friends or participating in his previous activities. He used to love the Special Olympics. Story 33. Businesses added surcharges and fees during the COVID pandemic, but have not removed them despite the pandemic being over. Story 34. Participation in student organizations has plummeted. I cannot speak for every country, but my involvement in a student organization and close work with student organization coordinators in my area have shown a significant decline, threatening many organizations. There are several reasons for this. No events result in fewer recruitment opportunities. The connection between student years has weakened, as students from one year no longer interact and get recruited by those in the following year. With an incentive to stay home, more students are maintaining contact with old friend groups online rather than seeking new ones on campus. There is increased focus on the social aspects of student organizations, leading to heightened competition and a larger group of individuals feeling unsuccessful in student life as they struggle to join social organizations, which can contribute to feelings of depression. Things are recovering, but in a new form. Not all organizations have made it through to the other side. Story 35. I'm in education, and I'm not sure how much the average person is aware of how much everything has declined for students since 2020. It has been a downward trend since the invention of the smartphone, but the COVID-19 pandemic accelerated the problems. Story 36. I believe that more people have died with or from the aftereffects of COVID-19. We have lost a disproportionate number of longshoremen, teachers, nurses, doctors, and generally working-class tradespeople. Those who remain are often less knowledgeable, uneducated, and inexperienced, with no one available to mentor them. Story 37. We will start seeing a portion of the population unable to work because of constant fatigue due to long COVID. Story 38. On a positive note, I feel that the improvements to delivery services, which were necessary during the COVID-19 pandemic, have remained. I also notice that people at work are much more willing to say, "Stay at home," when a colleague is sick. Previously, if someone had a sniffle, they would come in, but now there is significantly more social pressure for someone with an infectious illness to take the sick leave they deserve. Story 39. All our stores in my area that used to be open 24/7 have started closing at 10 or 11 at night. This has created challenges for us mid-shift workers, and they still have not returned to their previous hours. Story 40. This is counterintuitive, but many issues are blamed on the pandemic that were going to occur regardless. The housing crisis was well on its way for 20 years, inflation was already rising, and education was in decline. While the pandemic didn't help, it also wasn't the cause of these problems. Now, however, people attribute everything to the pandemic. Story 41. The rise of ignorance was definitely the case that we had two pandemics. The first was, I will argue, stupidity, or rather the idea that we didn't have to pay attention, that we could just gaze into our phones and hope the world would manage itself. Normally, this is a safe bet. That's the vestige of the social contract that government, in whatever form, will do some passable job in the basics of public policy, whether it be something as generic as influenza or an outbreak. For 100 years, we had good reason to expect that public officials would defer to experts, doctors, hospitals, scientists, and epidemiologists whose job it is, day in and day out, to monitor these issues. Yet, for the first time in a century in the West, we didn't do that. Instead, we listened to snake oil salesmen and charlatans of every kind. Perhaps, as I suspect, this was not really an accident. A cultivated disregard for expertise has been, and continues to be, fostered in certain circles, as it makes people less problematic to manipulate into this or that convenient belief. It encourages us not to seek out or rely on our own doctors or develop our own local support networks of clinicians or knowledgeable individuals. It prompts us to neglect our role and agency as citizens, relying upon one another and compelling us to surrender our rational selves to fear and ignorance. The second pandemic, of course, was COVID-19. While it was possible to pay attention and be surprisingly well informed, that is where the long con played out, creating a vulnerability in our ability to demand a standard of excellence from our public officials. It preyed on our decades of inattention to our public schools and healthcare, and it persists to this day. It was an assault on our long-held expectation that the state, despite its various failings, can be relied upon to provide accurate information. On this account, due to more than one lapse in leadership, not just the understandable early days, when nobody had very good information and we relied on past experiences of expertise, we were lied to and fed a series of shambling fabrications that remain even today. Now, even as I write this, we are only somewhat better, and it is clear that while our means to protect ourselves have improved, so too have the means to sow doubt and mistrust in the very institutions many of us know saved our loved ones and perhaps our communities. We stand at the brink of another potential outbreak of avian influenza, and already there are voices suggesting it's not so bad. It's not a big deal. I think then, as now, if the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention or the Food and Drug Administration show up for a visit wearing masks, they are likely there for what they believe is a good reason. It has been 4 years and 6 months since the first stirrings of COVID-19 in the streets of Wuhan. It is clear we did not learn nearly as much as we should have. The lesson is that the least educated, the most uninformed thinkers among us can harm us all, just as surely today as on that first day. We needed to have learned some discipline about taking a bad or even malicious opinion as fact against years of expertise or experience, and we still struggle with that, even today. Story 42. The combined neurological effects of the coronavirus and lockdown-related substance use have been significant. I feel like the average IQ has dropped by 15 points and so has impulse control. Story 43. People have completely forgotten how to interact with each other in in-person settings, and it keeps getting worse as people voluntarily stay at home. I have never seen so many posts in my local communities about not being able to find friends. Many people are alone but refuse to put themselves in situations where they can make friends. A lot of individuals also become radicalized in various ways. They do not see different views and lack empathy. Some countries are much better off than others in this regard, so it varies, of course. There is no way that this will end well. We are not designed to be alone. Story 44. I think of two main issues. First, brain damage, either from the virus itself or from hypoxia, could explain why we have more incidents related to airplane and vehicle maintenance or operator error. Every day, I encounter rear-end collisions or accidents in parking lots, cars running red lights after the cross-traffic light turns green, and vehicles straying into oncoming traffic. It's a nightmare. Story 45. People now treat illnesses like the flu much less seriously than they used to because at least it is not COVID. Story 46. Hospitals didn't have the same challenges typically observed during flu season. This is because many elderly patients who usually occupy hospital beds during that period have passed away. Story 47. I was called for jury duty last week. The bailiff said they are still trying to catch up on cases from 2020 and have hundreds more to handle. Story 48. People appear to be more impatient and less willing to deal with minor inconveniences, especially while driving. Story 49. A constant feeling of resentment. Essential workers were undervalued for no reason except to make politicians feel as though they were making sound decisions instead of reacting to hysteria. Our lives and health were compromised, and we were never compensated for our sacrifices to keep society intact. I will never trust the government again when they claim they are doing something for our own good. Story 50. When COVID-19 hit and we were all in the same situation, I found that people became friendlier, like clapping for the National Health Service. Now that it's over, the same people have become unpleasant. It's as if everyone is only looking out for themselves and disregarding everyone else. Story 51. My Year 7 cohort in 2021 was the worst behaved I had in 7 years of education, and teachers in other schools noticed it too. They acted like a hunting pack, showing total disregard for the rules and no fear of consequences. My theory is that these children were at a developmental stage where they observed the adults in their lives rejecting authority and having tantrums over issues like masks and vaccines, which influenced their behavior. Interestingly, these children are now the age responsible for much of the youth crime that exhibits similar behaviors. Story 52. There are currently many young adults who have experienced adolescent risk-taking behavior, such as engaging in sexual activities and drug use, much later than expected. I believe there are numerous college-aged individuals who are significantly less independent than they would have been if not for the COVID-19 pandemic. Story 53. Small niceties are gone. Local barns and noble locations before COVID-19 used to have a well-stocked condiment table in the cafe. There were plenty of plastic utensils, napkins, and extra coffee cup sleeves, along with a courtesy pitcher of ice water. Not anymore. Story 54. For all the applause, hospital workers and essential workers realized that they are not going to receive the monetary compensation they deserve. They are considering leaving their careers for opportunities that do not lead to burnout and offer better pay. Story 55. People still have not relearned how to act in public. There is massive entitlement, a lack of self-awareness, and no concern for others. The pandemic turned many of us feral, and some just aren't coming back. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.